Get some help out here!
Concussions in pro wrestling are a controversial subject. At one point in time, concussions weren't seen as a big deal, and unfortunately, this led to a lot of wrestlers suffering the effects of CTE. However, over the past 15 years or so, WWE and other top wrestling promotions across North America have begun to take the subject extremely seriously.
And again, this is
we've got a bad injury.
Again, this is a serious situation that has developed at ringside.
If a superstar looks to have suffered a concussion in the match, it's not uncommon for WWE to legitimately stop it. However, if the signs of the concussion surface at a later date, this will usually result in the superstar going through an extensive medical check to make sure they are 100% healthy before they return to the squared circle. But with that being said, let's look at 10 WWE wrestlers who were legitimately concussed in the ring. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists.
Chavo Guerrero was knocked out. Check out knee to the temple and then the head to the mat. We can tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, he suffered a severe concussion.
Number 10. The Miz. The Miz's match at WrestleMania 27 was supposed to be the biggest match of his career. He would be main eventing the biggest pay-per-view of the year against John Cena in a match for the WWE title. Unfortunately, halfway through the match, The Miz would suffer a concussion after a rather terrifying spot.
Look at this 100-yard dash. What?
Cena would tackle The Miz out of the barricade, and The Miz would end up bouncing his head off the concrete floor, knocking him out and giving him a serious concussion in the process. Cena would be forced to talk The Miz through the remainder of the match, which The Miz somehow managed to execute without most fans realizing he was even concussed. Once The Miz got backstage, he received immediate medical attention, and even The Rock would praise The Miz's courage to continue. Speaking on the acclaimed WWE 24 documentary, The Miz would reveal, "I don't remember much of it, to be honest, because I got knocked out into it. I got tackled off the bellkeeper's table onto the concrete cement. My head hit. I was out of it. I can't even watch it back because I don't like seeing myself like that." Number 9. Asuka. Now, it's not always huge bumps in wrestling that cause concussions. Sometimes something simple such as a punch or a kick can cause just as much damage. This was certainly the case when Asuka suffered a concussion at the hands of Shayna Baszler at the start of 2021. The concussion occurred during a tag team match between Asuka teaming with Charlotte Flair against a duo of Baszler and Nia Jax. In the match, Asuka had a submission hold locked in on Nia. This was when Baszler attempted to break up the move by executing a kick to Asuka.
The long way of the arm of Baszler.
God, and Shayna Baszler.
However, Baszler clearly put too much force into the kick and connected with Asuka's face. This resulted in Asuka losing a tooth, and she also received a concussion. Although the injury was serious, praise was offered by fans towards Baszler, who was incredibly professional once she realized Asuka had been legitimately hurt in the match. Number 8. Goldberg. Goldberg vs The Undertaker on paper sounded like an absolute dream match. However, when the two wrestling legends squared off at the 2019 Super Showdown pay-per-view, it was a fan's worst nightmare. The match was without a doubt one of the worst received matches in WWE history, and it was a match so poor that it made fans never want to see the two wrestle again. A lot of the spots would go wrong in the match, as Goldberg would drop The Undertaker on his head, and The Undertaker would struggle to lift Goldberg for certain spots. Nothing seemed to work in this match. However, according to Goldberg himself, he suffered a concussion in the match. There is some debate as to whether Goldberg actually suffered the concussion. It is believed that Goldberg actually received the concussion during his entrance, as this would have occurred when he headbutted the locker room door, which would make a lot of sense as the match was a disaster from the moment the bell rang. Number 7. CM Punk. CM Punk's last WWE match at the 2014 Royal Rumble pay-per-view is without a doubt the most infamous match in WWE history. The match would ultimately lead to Punk departing from the WWE, as well as a lawsuit between Punk and a WWE doctor. What people forget when discussing the match itself is just how Punk received his infamous concussion. Some fans believe that Punk received the concussion when he was chokeslammed through the announce table by Kane, but this wasn't the case.
Number 6. Come on, Kofi, get you some. Oh! And Kofi Kingston's made a career.
The reality was that Punk actually received the concussion when receiving a stiff clothesline from Kofi Kingston. Punk would even mention this during the actual court case. The concussion actually led to Punk's early elimination in the match. Number 6. Liv Morgan. When popular WWE superstar Liv Morgan received a concussion at the hands of Brie Bella in 2018, it sent the internet into a complete meltdown. Fans were calling for Brie to actually retire from the ring, citing that she was unsafe and she was going to hurt more people if she didn't stop wrestling. Although this response was too far, the concussion incident was unfortunate to say the least. It occurred during one of Brie's first matches back, and in the match she would perform a yes kick to Morgan, but Brie managed to kick her straight in the face, giving her a concussion and legitimately knocking her out in the process. Morgan would miss an extended period of time away from the ring, but luckily wouldn't miss the Evolution pay-per-view. Number 5. Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase on Raw following WrestleMania 29 was supposed to lead to an extended world title run for Ziggler. Unfortunately, a concussion seriously halted these plans.
That's tremendous. And now Ziggler is swagger.
Shortly after Ziggler won the title, he would be kicked in the head by Jack Swagger, which ultimately resulted in Ziggler missing several weeks of action. The concussion was so serious that Ziggler actually released a statement via WWE.com. WWE would ultimately decide to have Ziggler drop the world title following his return from the concussion. At the 2013 Payback pay-per-view, WWE would play up Ziggler's concussion in a storyline, and it would cost him the world title in a match against Alberto Del Rio. The match was also responsible for a double turn as Ziggler would turn babyface for the first time in his career. Number 4. Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle suffered one of the most serious concussions in WWE history at the SummerSlam pay-per-view in 2000, but somehow actually managed to finish the match. The match would serve as Angle's first ever WWE title match, facing Triple H and The Rock in a triple threat match, and the match would show the resilience and toughness that fans would come to expect from the Olympic gold medalist. The planned spot for the match was for Angle to be pedigreed through the announce table. He would then be taken backstage, only to return later on in the match. The reality was that the table botched and Angle was concussed and legitimately knocked out. WWE would continue the match as normal and they actually sent Angle back out without Angle knowing what on earth was going on. Angle would discuss the infamous incident on his podcast, stating,
I landed 4 feet below straight with my head on the concrete, and I was out. Triple H was trying to get my attention. He said I was snoring. I was just out of it. It was a complete nightmare. I don't remember any of it. But the match came across really good, and the thing is, the outcome was Vince thought I hit a home run that day. I stepped up for the company, and he said, I'm going to pay you back for this, and he did.
Number 3. Kairi Sane. TLC matches are some of the most brutal matches that WWE superstars can compete in, and Kairi Sane found this out the hard way at the TLC pay-per-view in 2019. Kairi and Asuka would team up to face Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, and during the match, Kairi would suffer a concussion which was so severe that she couldn't remember the spots that she had to perform in the match.
Kairi trying her best, but so...
Once Becky discovered that Kairi was concussed, she would perform a spot where Kairi would be rolled under the ring, and this was to prevent her from suffering any further damage. Kairi would actually end up missing quite a lengthy period away from the ring. Number 2. Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar's botched shooting star press during the main event of WrestleMania 19 is often referred to as one of the scariest of all time.
What the hell's Lesnar doing, Cole? Oh my God! Brock Lesnar went for the shooting star press, and Kurt Angle rolled out of the way.
The botch could have been way worse, and Brock was lucky enough not to break his neck. Brock would suffer a serious concussion from the botch move, which resulted in Angle being forced to communicate a new finish for the match. Lesnar was so concussed following the match that he blew up backstage and refused to let anyone near him. Luckily, Lesnar wouldn't miss too much in-ring time and he would be back competing by the next pay-per-view. And number 1, The Undertaker. When The Undertaker lost his legendary WrestleMania streak against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30, fans were stunned. As shocking as Lesnar breaking the streak was, fans were left a little disappointed in relation to the quality of the match. At this point, The Undertaker was synonymous with having WrestleMania classics, and unfortunately the match with Lesnar didn't hit the mark for some, no pun intended. It surfaced some time after the match that The Undertaker suffered a concussion at the beginning of the match. Discussing this on the Bill Simmons podcast, The Undertaker would reveal,
no one knew. I mean, I guess, Brock, I think that he got hyper nervous about it. Maybe for the casual fan, you couldn't tell, but I mean, if anybody that is in on our business or follows our business pretty intently, you can tell my memory of that day stops at about 3:30 in the afternoon. That's my last memory I have of that day. And my wife had come backstage, as you know, she normally does before, you know, I really start getting ready to start going through my process. And, you know, I told her, you know, what was going to happen and calmed her down.
Yeah.
and that was it. And I had no recollection of the match. You know, it was 4 o'clock in the morning before I knew what my name was.
The Undertaker went on to add that his concussion was the worst one he's ever received, and stated,
I basically stayed in my room in the dark for nearly 2 weeks. I've been concussed before, but never to that level. I'd never had like the lingering headache and the sensitivity to light, all that. That had never happened at, you know, to that extreme before. Yeah, it was strange. And then not being able to remember, you know, I've been concussed, like I said, a few times, and, you know, been able to finish the match and then know exactly when it happened, but not that time.
Oh, man.
Uh-oh, look out, Brock Lesnar. Oh, bad leg of the Undertaker.
Whoa.
But there you have it, folks. 10 times WWE wrestlers were legitimately concussed in the ring. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.